it's with you, everything's moving slower. I don't know what it is you do. I've been looking at you all night, trying to figure you out. I just want to make you smile.
Well, I reckon this spot will do. There's a nice chair over there I can see. So I think I'm going to have a little stop now. Hello folks, well it's a beautiful autumn day today, absolutely gorgeous. The trees are beginning to turn properly now, and so I'm out on a spin with my do-it-all backpacking bike. It's done about 2,000 kilometres now since the spring, so yeah, I thought I'd give you a little look round my Mason Bokeh.
My name's John and I make videos on camping, walking and astronomy. If you like what you see in this video, then please check my channel out, as you may find others that interest you there. But in the meantime, let's crack on with this video.
So I took delivery of the bike about November last year, but the winter was so bad, it was so wet that I was riding my winter bike virtually the whole winter. And this bike came out of hibernation in the spring. So some of you may know that my mum passed away last year, and she left some inheritance, and I wanted to buy something with that would remind me of her and my dad, who'd passed away about 35 years previously. Now your first inclination with this sort of thing is to buy a clock or a painting or something. And that indeed was my first thought. But it occurred to me that if the pictures and things on my wall at home are anything to go by, that very quickly after they get put up, they just kind of blend into the wall and you don't really see them anymore. And I wanted something that I would kind of notice regularly, if you like, as a reminder. And so my thoughts turned to getting a very special bike, which every time I rode it would remind me of my mum and dad. Now, we'd spent most of my childhood living in Sussex, and on summer weekends my parents used to quite like to go to the South Downs and have a little walk and call in some of the nice villages that are in the area and get a cup of tea and that sort of thing. And so it occurred to me that if I was going to get a bike to remember my parents by, that I ought to try and find one that essentially came from Sussex. And as it happens, Sussex is quite a hotbed of little independent bike manufacturers. So I had a few companies that I could pick from, all based in the South Downs. I whittled the list down to Enigma Bicycle Works, Riley Cycle Works and Mason Cycles, all located fairly close to each other and all smack bang in the South Downs. And each one of these was maybe 25 miles or less from my house, so it was easy to go and pay these people a visit. Now Mason Cycles operates from a barn on a working farm not far from Lancing on the coast of Sussex. The barn's about 2 miles inland, I think. And when you are interested in buying a bike from them, you basically go down to the barn and you have a chat with them about what you want and what size you think you are and that sort of thing. And then you get the chance to do a test ride on some of the local roads and trails that are in the area of different models of bike from which you can make your selection. And when I went to see them, I was given the bike belonging to the founder and owner of the company, Dom Mason. This was a titanium Mason Bokeh bike worth about £7,000. It's like more than my car that I'd driven down in. And yeah, they just let me ride off with it into the sunset. So I had a nice little test ride on this top-end bike. Now the Bokeh is marketed by Mason as a adventure sport bike, that's perfectly capable of functioning on roads, gravel trails and reasonably rough tracks. And after my little test ride on Dom's bike, I was sold on this model. So I placed my order, having had my style consultant, which was a Miss Camping astronomer who was with me, decide what colour I should get. I opted for the aluminium model in the end rather than the titanium one, as I thought £7,000 was a bit too much money to shell out on a bike, no matter sort of how special it is. The frame is designed by Dom and his team at Mason Cycles in Sussex, and then hand built in small frame builders in Italy, where it's also subsequently painted. The frame tubes are Italian, made by the company Didaci, and they're custom drawn to Mason's specifications for each individual model. The paint finish on those tubes is second to none. It's absolutely stunning in the flesh, and the welding of the frames, which is all done by hand, is absolutely beautiful also. The frame's got drillings for any manufacturer's mechanical or electronic group set. It's got routing down the front fork for a dynamo hub if you want it, and multiple mounting points. The only thing that I found missing on the frame, really, that I wished I could have had in hindsight, is some mounting points on the top tube for a top tube bag. However, they've just rehashed the Bokeh frame. It's almost identical, just with a few minor tweaks, and the latest version of it actually has these two little mounts for a top tube bag. In keeping with the Sussex theme of the bike, the wheels are from Hunt, and these are based in Partridge Green, maybe 10 miles away from Mason Cycles. I opted for 700C size wheels because most of my riding, in reality about 80% of it, is on road, but I could equally have spec'd the smaller 650B wheels. The tyre size that I picked was 38mm, which is a good compromise, enabling decent speed on the road and still reasonably good performance off-road. My tyres were specialised Sawtooth, I think they are. They're tubeless tyres. They're quite robust, a little bit heavy, but they roll really well on the road, very, very well indeed. They work well on kind of dry gravel and dirt. Mud, they're not so good, but I don't do a huge amount of that. So these were a good compromise for me. My wheel rims are aluminium, by the way, not carbon. I'm a bit old school, and I'm permanently dubious about carbon wheel rims. And the final piece of componentry from Sussex was the seat pin. This is made by a company called Ultimate Sports Engineering, or USE, and they're based in Pulborough in Sussex. The pin that I chose was aluminium because it weighed just the same as the carbon version. I've got a titanium version of this seat pin on my steel road bike, and I like the adjustment of it. I went for aluminium because, again, I'm always a little bit scared with carbon that you end up crushing the seat post, and since it weighed the same as the carbon one. The saddle on the bike is a Brooks Cambium C17 saddle. I've got this on other bikes, and one of the advantages of it for this bike is it's got loops on the back to take a Paradise saddle bag that I've got, quite a big one of these old-fashioned kind of duck cotton type things that I quite fancy using on a kind of lightweight little touring trip next year. So in my younger days I used to race bikes, and in those days the group set of choice was the Italian manufacturer Campagnolo. Now nowadays Campagnolo hasn't got the market share that it used to. It's focuses really only on kind of high, middle to top end componentry, and has left the rest of the market to Shimano and SRAM. So it's much less prevalent now than it used to be, but it makes components of stunning quality and beauty, and for that reason I chose the Italian brand's gravel group set, the Ekar group set, and this was kind of in keeping with the fact that the frame is made in Italy as well. Now the Ekar group set is a real thing of beauty, particularly the single crankset at the front. It's made from carbon fibre and looks absolutely stunning. There are a variety of options that you can have. I went for the 38 tooth model, which is the smallest chainring you can use, and I paired that with a 10 to 44 rear cassette, so I've got extremely low gearing available to me if I want it. The cassette is a 13 speed cassette, so although that's very wide range, you don't tend to notice it too much. I was a little bit worried that the gears would be hard to keep in adjustment with 13 sprockets at the back. One of the things that helps with keeping things in adjustment is to keep your drivetrain clean, which I do, and also to avoid any sharp bends in the cable routing. And one of the things that Mason have done is to route the cable to the rear derailleur along the top tube of the bike instead of the down tube, and what this seems to do is to keep any sharp bends to an absolute minimum, and the final little loop of cable that goes into the derailleur is quite long again, which keeps the radius of the curves quite large. So for me, as I say, I've ridden 2,000 kilometers so far on the bike, and touch wood, not had to touch the gears, and I think that's just an example of the attention to detail that Mason make to the design of their bikes. When I took the delivery of the bike, I weighed it straight away and it weighed like 9.2 kilos. Now I'm running slightly heavier tyres, and the Cambium C17 saddle isn't light, so I think the equivalent weight now is just under 9.5 kilos, and by the time you add pedals and bottle cages and put sealant in the tyres and things, it's I think a little under 10 kilos all in as a riding weight, which is about right for its class. Now all this spec detail is all very well, but the really important question is, what does it actually ride like? And the answer is, it's absolutely stunning. When aluminium frames first came out years ago, they had a reputation of being extremely harsh. And I'm sure if you were to compare this bike to a top flight carbon bike, for example, the carbon bike could be built with more compliance in it. But modern bikes, particularly high-end aluminium gravel bikes, don't really need to suffer from this, and part of the reason is that nowadays, of course, we're all running wider tyres at lower pressures, tubeless, and the tyres act as suspension for the bike basically. So the long and short of this is that the Mason Bokeh rides much smoother than my old school steel lugged road bike, which runs on 23mm tyres. So it really is a magic carpet ride, particularly over rough tarmac and kind of standard gravel. As I mentioned earlier, probably 80% of my riding is on the road, albeit some of the road surfaces are pretty dubious around here. And I must say, the Mason's a very responsive bike to ride. You certainly feel that all of your energy is going into forward motion, and I think part of the reason for this is the stiff bottom bracket of the bike makes sure that all your energy goes into moving forward. In terms of feel, it's not dissimilar to a road bike. It's not as skittish as my steel Mercian bike is, but that was put together to replicate the sort of geometry that I used to race on when I was a youngster. But this is certainly a very lively bike to ride on the road, and in terms of speed I'd say it's maybe 1 to 1.5 kilometers an hour slower, that's all, over my Mercian. Now most of that loss in speed I reckon probably comes from going uphill, and that's partly because the Mason bike weighs probably not quite a kilo more, but getting on for a kilo more than my Mercian does, and it's got much fatter tyres as well, which aren't going to ride quite so fast, even though you hardly notice it in reality. But the other reason is the lower gearing of the Mason encourages you to winch your way up hills, whereas on the Mercian road bike the higher gearing means you've got kind of no choice but to get out the saddle and muscle your way up, so you tend to climb a bit faster. The other side of the coin is the descents though, and the Mason is stunningly confident on descents. Many years ago I suffered really frightening speed wobble that I only just managed to control, and it took away a lot of my confidence descending, to the extent that I descend like an 80-year-old. And what I found on the Mason is it's just so sure-footed on descents that I've kind of got my joy of descending back again. It's fantastic. I think the reasons behind this are really the fatter tyres over a set of 23mm road tyres just give you that much more confidence, and probably the stiffness of the frame as well is maybe helping. But yeah, what I've noticed is when I look on Strava, which I'm not doing it for any like trying to get KOMs or anything like that, it's just interesting to compare your performance. I seem to be getting a lot of like personal bests on downhills when I go out on the Mason Bokeh, and I'm sure this is the confidence that the bike's giving me. So I think on the road, outside of a traditional race situation, the Bokeh, particularly with 38mm sized tyres, really has no significant disadvantage over a standard road bike. And one of the things that attracted me to the aluminium version of the Bokeh was I noticed that this particular frame has been used very successfully on ultra endurance races like the Transcontinental, which is a several thousand kilometre self-supported race across Europe, and also I think it's either won or come second or something in the Tour of Rwanda, which is a very demanding ultra distance race. So this makes the bike very suitable for bike packing as well as sort of day-to-day road riding. And whilst I'm never going to be doing anything like an ultra endurance event, if the bike's good enough for Josh Ibbott, it's good enough for me. So having discussed what the bike's like on road, what's it like off road then? Well, I've got a Sussex track, one of the National Cycle Network's tracks, within about a mile of my house, and I can link together a bunch of these different National Cycle Network tracks and get all the way to the south coast. And these are typically like disused railway line type of tracks. Lovely, nice, gravelly tracks, and the bike is superb over that sort of trail. I've done some bike packing trips on it, and it's easily capable of holding a tent, sleeping bag, and all the stuff that you need for a night out. When you go further onto the more roughy tufty
type stuff. The limitation really is, for me, is my skill level being rubbish, and probably my tyres not being quite fat enough for that. Some of the sections on the South Downs and the South Downs Way are fairly rough really, and for me to do them with any degree of comfort I'd need fatter tyres. The bike will take fatter tyres, I think 45mm tyres, which would make South Downs stuff much simpler. But if I was to stick 45mm tyres on the bike, that wouldn't be ideal for most of the riding I do, the 80% or so that's on the road. One solution to this dilemma that people often do is have two sets of wheels. They'll have one size 700C with relatively narrow tyres on for their roady type work, and a smaller set of 650B wheels with fatter tyres for when they do roughy tufty stuff like you get on bits of the South Downs, but I haven't done that yet. The Mason Bokeh, to the spec that I've got it built to, currently is around £3,600. Now granted, this is an enormous amount of money for an aluminium bike. However, I kind of feel, rightly or wrongly, that metal bikes have more soul to them, if you like, than carbon bikes, and I wanted a bike that was hand built by somebody and not made in a mass-produced kind of mould thousands of miles away from home. So yeah, the fact that Mason is a Sussex brand and the bike's made by hand in Europe, and it's got fitted with components from Italy and in several cases my local area, the South Downs, really made this a kind of emotional bike rather than one built just on hard numbers of cost and performance. You can go and visit the company, talk to the people who are involved in the design of it, get them to help you choose what you want, and go and collect the bike from them. They do like a personal handover to you if you want, and you just can't get that from, you know, mass-produced bikes made by, I don't know, Giant or Specialized or something. Frame is hand built. The level of craftsmanship shown on the frame is amazing, and the Italian Campagnolo Ekar group set is a beautiful thing to look at, as is the whole bike, to be honest. Really, this bike is way better than somebody of my ability deserves. I'm significantly overbiked, I would say, with this bike, but it does everything that I want beautifully, and that's really all that I can ask for of a bike. And yeah, for me, you know, every time I go out on it, it kind of, you know, reminds me of my parents, which is what I wanted it to do. And for me personally, it's much better than a clock sitting on a mantelpiece. So on that note, I'm going to head off and find myself a hot chocolate and a bit of cake, because it's feeling a bit cold now in the shade here. And I'll bid you cheerio. I hope you've enjoyed this look around my bike, and I'll see you next time. Take care.